preparing for a changing of the guard like no other. King Charles III to be officially crowned in a coronation not seen in the United Kingdom since that of his mother 70 years ago. 7 decades of Charles as heir in waiting.
I, Charles, Prince of Wales, will become your liege man.
Sometimes a forgotten prince, and other times all too front and center. But either way, groomed his entire life for a moment now arrived. And yet somehow, he still manages to seem a man out of time, forever out of step, be it behind the curve or ahead of it. In the English countryside, a few hours south and west of London, a town called Poundbury is emerging from an early morning mist. 40 years ago, it emerged from the inner reaches of Charles' imagination, an experimental town to be built with sustainability in mind, along with the environment.
It was almost an outrageous concept, and it was entirely the prince who was behind it. And everyone told him, frankly, that it would be a failure.
Ben Pentreath is one of the architects Prince Charles, as he was back then, brought on board to help him with his vision.
You've got expensive private housing, you've got less expensive private housing, you've got social housing, all mixed together in an integrated way.
Poundbury is part of the Duchy of Cornwall, one of the royal family's private estates, established centuries ago to provide an income for the heir to the throne. That's why Charles has been able to impose his own particular wishes on the town. There's a Queen Mother Square, a Duchess of Cornwall pub, and then there are the doors.
People told us if they live here that, if they want to change the color of a door or a house, they need to get permission from the duchy. I guess
Strictly speaking, that's true. I will tell you a little secret, which nobody knows, but now everyone will know, is that there is a little committee of door changing colour questions, and I'm on that committee.
Okay.
And we've never rejected anyone's request to change their door colour, because, who cares what colour your door is?
But those are the kinds of details that have fed Charles' critics in the past, dismissing Poundbury as a toy town.
I'm afraid that anyone who was talking 30 or 40 years ago about the environment or organic food and farming actually was being ridiculed.
But the world caught up and Charles carried on. In 2012, he opened the UK's first commercial-scale biomethane plant here, creating renewable gas and connecting it to the local distribution grid.
He used to squiggle all over things, and he decided the final view of the street scene, what it should be like. You must not ever put a front porch on or anything like that.
Fran Leeper is one of Poundbury's earliest residents and the editor of its local magazine. She's a fan of Charles' hands-on approach in Poundbury, but she also says his coronation is a chance for him to modernize the monarchy.
I would like to see it moving towards a slightly more Scandinavian model. It becomes an embarrassment that there's so much land, there's so much wealth attached to the monarchy. On the other hand, it is also part of some of the trappings and some of the pomp and circumstances. It's all part of what we are. We're never going to break from that. That's wonderful.
But not for everyone, especially outside the Poundbury bubble. A recent YouGov poll commissioned by the BBC found that just 48% of people between the ages of 25 and 49 favor keeping the monarchy. That number drops the lower you go in age. And in our own straw poll of young Londoners, we found some serious ambivalence.
I don't think that our generation has the same appreciation for the monarchy that, our grandparents' generation would.
I guess with Harry and Meghan, I guess I do care there, but other than that, I'm not really interested.
I wouldn't be bothered about it if it wasn't here anymore.
Whether that would ever translate into actively working to abolish the monarchy is another question. Renee Landell is a racial equity expert. She's also just finishing a doctorate on British colonialism and slavery in the Caribbean.
It's unavoidable for me as a historian to not think about the monarchy and the royal family that are, tied in with these histories.
Histories that aren't even mandatory on the school curriculum here. Landell would like to see discussion moving away from modernizing the monarchy to abolishing it.
How can you modernize or bring up to date an institution which is so historically grounded? That was the point of its construction, historically grounded in violence and oppression. How can you do that? And even thinking about the huge class divide between the royal family and the average working person in Britain, it's huge.
In the wake of Queen Elizabeth's death, demands for a less ostentatious and more inclusive monarchy have only grown. Simply trimming the number of family members waving at their subjects from the balcony of Buckingham Palace won't be enough to change the monarchy, says historian Anna Whitelock.
It's out of touch, it's privileged, it lacks transparency, it lacks accountability, it exempts itself from legislation, it doesn't pay tax. How are those things fair or contributing to society and in any way reflective of it?
Whitelock also points out that in the end, the monarchy itself may rob the king of his ability to speak out on the matters that have dominated his years in waiting.
This is a man who for all of his life has been championing the environment and emphasising the climate emergency before it was described as such. But of course the irony is he now has the ultimate job, the biggest platform, but he's not allowed to say anything because he's a constitutional monarch.
Given that he's the oldest king to assume the British throne, historians may well be looking to his time in waiting when addressing legacy.
Thank you. Thanks.
For architect Ben Pentreath, back in Poundbury, that's just fine.
He's acted in his life within the limits that he's been able to do in a way that are actually kind of quite amazing if you think about somebody else who could have taken on that role. They could have been interested in not very much at all.
But Poundbury will have to do without him now. Its care and the rest of the Duchy of Cornwall have already passed to Prince William as the next heir to the throne.
So, Margaret, Poundbury seems to reveal a little bit about Charles, about, I suppose, a bold set of ambitions, but as you indicated, certainly not without limits.
No, and people are really interested in Poundbury right now because it presents a blueprint, if you like, of what the king's vision of society will be. But that means it exposes all sorts of things, including a lot of anomalies. I mean, he's experimenting with bold, modernizing ideas about urban planning, and yet he's only able to do so because he has enormous inherited wealth at his hands. And maybe that's what makes part of it feel a little bit unreal, these old facades, a very modern ideal. And the people who want to reform the monarchy are worried that his environmental credentials are going to get in the way. The environmentalists are worried that now that he's king, he won't be able to speak about the things that are so important to him, including what he wanted to achieve with Poundbury.
What a curious place, Margaret. Thank you.
A pleasure.